because they're both sick.
Oh boy. Okay, Nancy, can you hear what's happening?
Yes, just at the very beginning, we couldn't hear you guys, but now we can.
Okay. We were just saying you have a member of the public there. We gotta record that, you know.
Zaylee, I brought my computer. If you want me to do minutes.
I should be good, I think. But if at some point, because he's got him and he's watching a movie, so we should be fine.
Let me know.
He never gets to watch movies, so he's like, "This is the best day ever." We might not have that.
We have.
Well, I know, but the reason is it glitching for any? Yeah, our internet connection is unstable.
No, we're fine. We can see you just fine. You keep moving and talking just normally. Cool. Well, shall we call to order then for 6 o'clock? I mean, it's actually after 6. It's 6:03.
Do you know if Kristen's coming?
I mean, we'll just have to.
And Jono?
I know. But I don't want to waste
Zaylee.
Frida's time.
Yeah, oh, and Frida, that's right. We have a visitor. Is it, what time
well,
is
let's
it?
get started and we'll see who shows up, right? Because it's 6:03.
Okay.
Do
Do we have a quorum? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, we're good. Okay, so we have a quorum, so let's get started at whatever time, 6:03, whatever Zaylee's typed at this point. Public comment, is any members of the public want to speak on anything, especially things that aren't on the agenda? Oh, Kristen, yay. Okay, sounds good. Any additional items to add to the agenda? All right, should we review and approve the minutes from the October 12th meeting? Did anyone read those minutes?
Yeah,
Yes.
I did. I sent comments, so they look good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you
I
like to
moved
make a
to
motion?
approve them. I moved to approve.
Okay, how long was your, will you have a second?
Second.
Second, all right, all those in favor? Okay, the motion carries, the minutes are approved for the October 12th, 2023 meeting. I do not remember if I had any correspondence, certainly no paper correspondence. All right, old business, so we're on to grant opportunities, which frankly should be new business. So we usually just organize it based on the order we're gonna go in, so that's misleading. Okay, so we'd like to welcome Frida Powers to Bristol and to just have a discussion about what it is that you're doing with the town, what we're doing, and maybe places that we could find opportunities where we could work together. So, yes, that'd be great if you could do an introduction.
Introduce yourself.
Hello, you guys. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I am happy to help you guys and support you guys in any way that I can when I get a better flavor for what your needs are in the conservation area. I did get an email and good timing this past couple weeks regarding a river project that you guys have on Bristol Flats that you have applied for in the past, but it didn't really go anywhere. So there's some good opportunities for funding literally right in front of us. 2 different opportunities for funding that might be able to take care of that project. So, or to get it started anyways. So I actually have a meeting on Monday to talk about that with Valerie, I think, and some other folks. So we're starting on something. So that is your Bristol Flats project. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with that, with berm removals.
Is this the Saunders River access?
Yeah, actually, this project came up when we were on hiatus for the summer. And so it's actually an item on today's agenda for me to share with this commission what that grant application was all about. Okay.
Right, we were thinking we'd talk about that during the parks updates, right?
Probably, yep. Yeah,
or maybe during grant opportunities. You know, I'm open to whatever.
Well, anyway, the project, whenever you learn more about it, it sounds to me like from the information I've received and looked at, it would be a good fit for at least one of the 2 funding opportunities that I'm aware of. So, and those 2 funding opportunities are due in the next, 4 to 6 weeks-ish. So we'll be discussing more in the next couple of weeks to get a firmer idea of what we want to get going on that and what the funding looks like. But definitely I'll keep my ears open for your agenda topics and sort of get a better idea of what you guys are looking for as far as conservation in Bristol and where funding can step in, because there's lots and lots of funding opportunities for conservation.
So I do have one idea. Carolyn asked us to put on our thinking caps of possible projects that you might be able to help us find funding for. I had written to several people associated with state conservation organizations about invasive species in Bristol Pond. And the one response was, and I can forward these to you or give you more information about them should that warrant it. She said you could seek funding to try to do that. This is mostly in relation to Eurasian milfoil in Bristol Pond. So I'm sorry I don't have the details of the person's name, but she did say you could seek funding to do that. And then she also recommended that we contact the Lewis Creek Association, who is already doing invasive species control. I don't know if that's a funding opportunity as much as a collaboration.
If I might, yeah, it's good to hear that. Sad to hear that, but good to hear that. It's a great opportunity for both collaboration and funding. And my last employment was actually with the town of Eden, and pretty much their only resource is their beautiful Lake Eden, which is a municipally owned beach. Of course, the state controls the waters therein, but the beach is municipally owned, and it's a gem to the town, and it's really their only asset. So it brings recreation. And so they were very proud to keep it clean for many years with grant funding using the greeter. You notice the greeters program where you can have typically young folks or retired folks sit at a little shed at the point of entry for the water body and teach about the clean, dry boats method. And so they did that for many, many years. I think they were successful for probably over 10 years keeping that lake clean. And in the last 2 years, they did get milfoil. Unfortunately, it's sort of inevitable. And what that town actually did was double down on their grants. And my last year with them, we actually went after 2 different grants for the lake, one to continue the greeter program and another to combat the milfoil. And they were awarded both grants. So the state is very eager to control invasives where they can. And water bodies are one of those areas. So there's definitely funding, and they love collaboration. Actually, the same thing happened in Eden. They have the Lake Eden Association, very similarly, and the state looks very favorably upon collaborative efforts. So that would actually benefit the town to have a partner like that on the application.
Excellent.
And will you able to get into touch with Kelly?
Yes.
Okay.
She wrote me and I have not yet written her back.
I was gonna make sure I remember to do
We
that.
do
I
have a
couldn't remember.
connection.
Okay.
Yes, thanks.
I said a note to do it, but I couldn't remember.
Yeah, you did.
Okay, thanks.
Okay,
So I'm happy to help you guys in that effort wherever I can.
okay.
Great. I feel like there's often very small grant opportunities that we've sort of wanted to apply for, or sometimes we throw the idea of, oh, we could do 500 here, 300 there or something. And I also make sure we understand the policy and the procedure for those. So in the past, we've had a little bit of confusion over, could we just apply for grants? And then we just said no, the select board needs to approve grants. And I just wanted to know if you could speak to a little bit about the just procedure of how we go about these things and how your role maybe changes that system.
That's a really good and fair question. And it's kind of a learning curve from what my experience so far. I've been here about 100 days, give or take. And initially I was kind of surprised to see how many current grants the town of Bristol has going. Quite an extensive list, like over 13, I would think. And they were not really being documented or tracked in any place. So my first initiative was to create a spreadsheet of your existing grants and kind of start tracking them. And that became a chore of its own because nobody really knew who was going after what grants. And there is actually a 1-page document that the town has that is sort of a grants procedure. And really that lays out how grants should be sought after and who should be managing them or how they should be managed. And one of the first steps really is to notify the select board that there's an interest in going after funding. And there's a document, a one-page sheet that the town has that's, I think it's called a grant summary sheet. And that should be filled out. And it really just outlines where's the funding coming from, what is the project we're looking at putting the funding towards, what's the amount we're seeking, deadline, kind of the basics like that. And it goes before the select board, preferably well in advance of going after the grant, so that you get the select board's kind of blessing and green light that yes, the town is aware that we were looking for this money and that we support doing that. And that's an important step to not miss, for a couple of reasons, because the select board ultimately has a lot of authority over the town and they really should know what's going on. And also a funding reason, because a lot of grants, you need to have the funding because they are often reimbursement based. So it does play a part in the budget when you get into bigger grants. But even for small grants, people should know where the money is coming from and going towards. So that should be happening. I'll be honest, it hasn't been happening every time. There are some instances where I have found where residents or board members are going after grants, which is excellent that the town has so many really passionate and involved people. But from an organization standpoint and also from a budgeting standpoint, it really is important to follow the procedure that's there and to start with permission from the select board so that they are aware of what's happening in all boards and for all projects. So we'll try to work on getting that better. But yes, there is a process in place, and starting with the select board being notified and kind of getting their green light.
Okay, so the procedure we have been supposed to have been following, we are continuing with. We're not supposed to talk to you first or anything.
To my knowledge, it hasn't been tweaked yet.
Okay. Okay, just good to know, just so we're all on the same page. That sounds great.
So if you are seeking any grants that you know about and you just don't know how to proceed, or you don't have the capacity to go after, or you just needed support in writing the application or getting documentation, reach out to me. Anybody on the board, feel free to reach out to me. And otherwise, if you have a project that you really know is important to the town or could potentially be a big impact for the town and you really would like funding for it and you just don't know where to begin, reach out to me and say, see if you can find some funding for this project and let me know a description of what it is that you're looking for.
Yeah.
Wow, excellent.
I know.
I'm so glad you're here.
I know, right?
Good.
This is great.
Do you, just as a starting point, I'm trying to think of like big things we've talked about recently or in the last year or two. A couple things come to mind. I don't know what the other people on the commission think about that, but there's the Memorial Park bridge issue, right? And there's also the garbage, illegal dumping stuff. Would that be appropriate to talk to Frida about, you think? Thoughts? Anyone want to jump in? Well, Memorial Park is such a big problem, and I don't know how much you know about Memorial Park. It's sort of a hidden gem, even among people that live in Bristol.
Well, I can give you
are you familiar with Memorial Park or
a little bit? Yeah. So the parks are on my radar because of Porter Knight, who's passionate about parks, and so it's sort of on my radar in that regard, and also the rec department, who's passionate about getting outdoors. And we are currently looking at some funding opportunities actually to get the parks evaluated for better ADA compliance and accessibility, which is another passion project of Porter's. And we've also recently seen some funding opportunities which would apply to outdoor recreation. And I've actually mentioned to Valerie in an email just in the past couple days, actually, to gauge her thoughts on whether or not I've heard that there's a problem with the bridge and that it impedes access. It is impeding access to a really beautiful park of Bristol. And so there's some potential funding opportunities, which I've asked Valerie, what do you think about that bridge being thrown onto this application because it's outdoor rec? And so it is actually on my radar to look at.
Yeah, that bridge is so much bigger than we know how to deal with for our commission, right? It's the scale of engineering, the scale of dealing with that is something I think just beyond what we've known how to even approach. And the idea of like, yeah, we would need a grant, someone has to do this, but like, how and like with what time and what grant would you possibly do? And
Yeah.
and it's just been, I think that's been something that's been for me looming, is this like, how do we ever get that park back to what it was, much less to make it even improved, right? Like how do you ever deal with that? And I don't know if you've been there, if you'd like to go out to the parks or something, we could maybe take you out sometime.
Thank
but,
you. I haven't seen the bridge that we're talking about, and I appreciate the invite, and I would totally love to do that. So yeah, we'll make
Yeah.
a date to do that.
Yeah, when you see it, you're like, oh, how do they even put this here in the first place? And how on earth would you ever fix it? So,
Yeah.
I know Alex really loves that spot. I don't know if you have anything you want to talk about with Memorial. I know you're busy holding the baby, but
I think there's a, I actually, this is something I've been meaning to bring up, which is somewhat just kind of, hang on for a second, buddy. Archer.
Archer.
Why don't you talk amongst yourselves for a second?
Frida, I'd be happy to take you out there in the next week or two.
Well,
before the snow.
I don't mind snow. I'm from Belvedere.
yeah, it's dangerous though. It's a dangerous spot.
Yeah, it is
Well,
dangerous.
I will be in Bristol on Monday. I know that's sort of short notice, but we have a bunch of meetings, grant related stuff to talk about on Monday. So I'll be there if you're available.
I'm not available this Monday.
Okay, well, we can schedule another time.
Let's do. Do I have, you have Frida's email address?
Yeah, it's just grant. Is it just grants or grant admin? Is that it?
Grant admin.
Great.
At
I'll just be in
Bristol-
touch with you.
At bristol.org.gov. What?
bristolvt.org.
Oh,
Great. Okay.
Sorry, Alex, did you want to jump in there?
I don't know that I've got a Memorial Park bridge thing, but it's not super grant related, so I don't know if we should burn up.
Okay.
We should come back to this.
Okay. So that's, I think, just, yeah, such a big scoping issue. And then, was there anything with Eagle Park, Kristen? Is that under control at the current state? Is that's all taken care of?
Yeah, the repairs to the fishing platform will be paid for by FEMA. And there's a small Pete Domenico Memorial Fund that will help support some of that work as well.
And the good news on that memorial, not the Memorial Bridge, but the fishing platform, is that it is FEMA from the 2019 storm, which is terrible because it's 4 years ago, but it's good because it's a unique storm that the government did a clawback on. So you'll be getting 90% reimbursement instead of 75% from FEMA on that, which is fantastic.
It is very
This is so fantastic, and it's fantastic that you know that and you're able to
Yeah.
talk to us about it.
Yeah.
I'm very
that's good.
familiar with FEMA because Eden got slammed with that 2019 storm. So
excellent.
So yeah, so those are some of the parks. Sycamore just sort of does Sycamore things. We can't really improve anything on it because of the way the land was deeded with any permanent structures. So that one just sort of doesn't have the same kind of infrastructure.
You're still thinking granting.
I'm trying to think what
opportunity.
grant opportunities. Yeah,
What do
like, is
we
there-
need
I'm trying to think
money
what's
to
we,
do?
we need money to do.
Yeah,
Like we need money to improve the parking lot at Sycamore. I don't know if that's worth,
that parking lot is a mess. It's just full of potholes.
Well, there's potholes the size of cars. I mean, it's just, it has lakes in
Yeah.
it, yeah.
That's
but-
all, that's,
But that's one that I know Alex and Meredith had worked on, and they got that redone. That was something. So maybe we'll bring that up to Meredith again in the future about that. Any other grant ideas or questions? I know there was, sort of part of the town plan has ideas about this sort of mandate or suggestion that we should be thinking about invasives in Bristol or endangered species and about communicating these things to people. We haven't done too much with that. If that's an interest to anyone, or just so you're aware that that's something that would fall under our purview if you saw something that we could jump on opportunistically, I guess, in that case.
And Carolyn, currently we've got the Wildlife Corridors project. So I don't know if that's a topic that you have seen in grant funding circles, but that's going on right now.
are you mapping currently?
We're getting towards mapping. I
mapping
think.
and monitoring, tracking,
Yeah.
wildlife cameras.
Who are you partnering with that work?
That's work we're doing with Middlebury College with a professor in the biology department and environmental studies. And she's going to be doing her senior seminar. She's had a few independent research students working throughout the last year or so, getting sort of the base, getting the work done ahead of time, so that starting this spring, her senior seminar will be completely focused on Bristol and New Haven wildlife.
Wow, really cool.
Yeah.
The chance to go ahead and have some block funding for that would be phenomenal, because back when this is going maybe at least a year back, I want to say end of summer, when we first started the discussions. I think there's a wildlife tracking person that did some of the initial.
So,
Well,
Sophie.
there was Sophie. Oh, that was Sophie.
Yeah.
All right. I thought there was somebody else that came to one of our meetings that presented. Maybe it was a different. I thought it was through UVM, but in any event, the point is that there's cost to having some of this assistance. I think with Middlebury College, the arrangement might be that it's sort of integrated as a portion of a course, but I don't know all the details there. So yeah, grant funding would be amazing to jump right in. That I think is the most urgent need.
Okay. I wrote it down.
Yeah, I think that, the students are working on their projects, on trying to talk to the community, and they're putting up cameras and doing camera trapping in the parks. So it's sort of like smaller budget things they can do with a couple $1,000s. But then what we're gonna do with that ultimately could be very expensive if are we talking easements? Are we talking campaign to spread the word? Like, I have no idea where that next step is, but that would be more expensive, I imagine, than what we're doing now, which is sticking, cameras on trees and having students flip through the images, But I don't know what that, but I don't know what that is. Like, how big do you even imagine that? I don't really know where that goes, but it has the capacity to go somewhere, but I don't know. Yeah.
I think the first step is just noting whether there's something out there. There must be some sort of an appendix of grants that are, available now, or, the deadlines are looming and all that kind of stuff. So that would be the place to start, and then just see what the outline is for the grant objectives and the rest of it.
There's basically a grant for everything you can think of, and especially in the state of Vermont when it comes to environmental or conservation. They're really all about it, and they want to see success projects. So along the lines of what you're saying, I'm curious to know how closely you guys work with the planning commission in Bristol, and I can take some time on my own and look through what your planning documents reflect for the town, but larger ideas of where this kind of data would end up going could be wildlife corridors and stuff like that, and there definitely is grant funding for all of that. So
That's so interesting that you mentioned the planning commission. I attended their meeting on Monday.
Oh, cool.
Because they're changing zoning regulations to try to reflect the need for housing in central areas of Bristol. And someone at the meeting mentioned, you really should be taking into consideration wildlife corridors. Do you want to promote high-density housing in places where we know there are wildlife? And I was so happy that that person had suggested that. So I know that wildlife and wildlife mapping is on the Planning Commission's radar, but I don't think that it's not a priority. So somehow getting that line of communication open.
okay.
I think to answer your question is that it's more as needed basis do we interact with the planning commission. They might come to us, but I don't think we have any sort of regular agenda type of involvement with what they're doing, or vice versa. If they have a section, we just reviewed it recently, that type of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I think Kristen and I might get to it later, because it did come up in the meeting that we attended, where good relations and somewhat regular relations with other committees and and commissions in towns is very helpful, because you don't want to
Absolutely.
have to start that relationship up from ground zero. You want to have
Right.
it established where and when possible.
Right.
Mhm.
And definitely one of my favorite things about municipal work is how interrelated all of the topics become, you know, in one way or another. And so the reason why they are currently updating their housing in that document is grant related as well. So that's why it's focused on housing. But I'm also grateful that somebody at least mentioned wildlife in the intersection of housing, because they're certainly related, right? So
Mhm.
your work does relate with theirs, and I understand maybe you weren't necessarily invited on that discussion because it's housing, but in a way it does they do meet each other, you know?
Mhm.
So definitely, and there's funding for collaboration on that, so.
Hmm. Well, thank you very much for your perspective and coming and meeting us and just hearing kind of the things we're thinking about. And it'll just be great to just keep that connection. And if you see things pop up, just be like, hey, is this something you're interested in? Or if we have questions that we can ask you. Just a absolutely amazing resource to have you in town. I'm so excited. This is
Great.
so cool.
Great.
Yeah.
I look forward to helping any way that I can and supporting you guys in your goals for Bristol. It's a beautiful town and we want to keep it that way.
Yeah, thank you. Does anyone else have any other thoughts before we move on?
I recall some discussions about signage and trying to make park signs in particular, I guess, uniform and
Yeah,
more obvious than they are.
Mhm.
And
you got that right. There's a grant we're going to be going after called the VOREC grant, which is for outdoor recreation. And
We've written that one before.
I know you have. So we're going to do it again. And this time we're going to get it. And one of the items that we are incorporating into the application is kind of a universal signage for all of Bristol and a wayfinding for not just the parks, but for kind of connecting all rec and main points of interest in town. So it'll kind of
Right.
connect all of them, but
Wow.
definitely focusing on the rec, outdoor rec.
Good, perfect.
Yeah, I'm so excited because we've just been like, we'll all write like some edits and we'll send this thing in and we don't get it and you're like, well, we didn't know what we're doing. So,
Hey,
so exciting. I'm
get
so
there. We'll
glad
get
you're
there.
here.
So we might actually look for you guys for like a letter of support or something for those kinds of applications as well. Because again, the state really likes collaborative efforts and they really like towns that have interested parties across lots of sectors, which you definitely have. So.
Yeah, and just a note to that, we are happy to write letters on behalf of events or grants or whatever it is, but we do have to publicly warn and we have to have a publicly warned meeting where we have to agree on things. If that happens, we need to make sure we know that in time to get on our agenda, or at least right before the meeting where we can add it to the agenda, which is the second Thursday of every month from 6 to 7:30. So just keep that in mind, because sometimes we get people asking for letters and we're not going to meet for 3 weeks. And I'm like, I can't help you even though I'd love to. So
I'll try to keep that
just
in
to
mind.
keep in
Yeah.
mind. Yeah. We only meet once a month, so it can get tricky for the timing for those things sometimes. I mean, once I think we even approved Porter for, maybe it was Vorek, I remember what it was. We approved like, when you need the letter, we agree to it now. And it was like, months later, we're like, well, at least we know we agreed to it openly.
So we are going after Borac again. So I think you guys did supply a letter of support for them in 2020 or 2021. And if now would be an appropriate time to request an updated letter of support for the same grant, feel free to email that to Valerie or myself, because we are going to go after that grant again. And the application will be tweaked slightly, but we are incorporating the same things that we didn't get the first time. So the signage and creating a kind of I think they had a name for it, outdoor Bristol or something like that. That was kind of gonna put it all together, all the outdoor rec together. So
it was, I think Explore Bristol was one of the ones we did.
Explore Bristol, maybe that was it. I might be getting it wrong. Yeah. So yeah.
But then when I told people we were working on Explore Bristol, they were like, well, that'll take an hour. And I'm like, hey.
Well, yeah. So
Well, what do we think? Do we want to make a blanket statement we would approve, or do we want to see a copy of it and then vote next time? What's your timeline? When does it due?
Ooh, these grants are due in December, so December
Ooh.
15th is when VORAC is due.
December
And
15th.
our next meeting
On the
is.
14th, we could
Yeah, we need a
read
blanket.
it. Why
I
not
could-
blanket just say that we approve as we approved
Well,
it
given
last
that
time?
I'm not familiar with this grant, but some of you are,
Mhm.
if you've,
We
if this
approved,
is,
yeah.
yeah, let's just do
I helped
it.
write it with
I
Ian and
move
Meredith.
that we,
Okay.
that we support this grant.
I could even
application.
email you guys a draft letter of support, and somebody there could review it, or you could even review it at your next meeting, I guess, if you wanted, and as long as you emailed it to me pronto, we could still incorporate it in the application.
Could I
Yeah.
get you to go over the name of it again?
Of the grant?
Yeah,
Well, everything is an acronym with the state of Vermont. So it's
Right.
VOREC, which is the Vermont Outdoor Recreation, some equity.
I
It's
can
all
look
about
it-
equity.
I can look it up.
It's
So
the
it's
equity grant. So it's
it's
about
VORAC. Is that what it is?
VOREC, E for equity.
no.
EC. Okay.
It's really about lowering barriers to getting outside and increasing access.
Okay. I'll look up what the acronym is and put that in the minutes.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, so what do we want to do that's actionable? Do we want to say we'll do a letter? Do we want to see it and then vote, or instead of the letter on the 14th at 9 p.m.? What do you
Yeah,
what do
is
you
that
feel
too
like?
late to get it the night before the grant is due?
The grant is due on the 15th, and my experience with Bristol is they like to actually apply on the day that it's due. So I think we'll probably be doing that.
Okay, so maybe we should be formal.
Yeah,
and get
I think Chris is trying to say something.
Oh,
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think we have very similar language to the previous letter, which we did approve. So I would be comfortable moving that we give Carolyn permission to sign a letter that's very similar to the last support letter. And we can get that to Frida well ahead of schedule.
Yeah.
I agree.
yeah,
Sounds
I
fine.
second that.
Okay,
Yeah.
second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Great.
we'll do that. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll make a note. I'll write a letter that's similar. I'll find it in my email and resend that, but updated.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Okay, great. So, yeah, that sounds good. Great. So, in that case, any of the last things for Frida today? Should we move on? Okay,
Thank
cool.
you,
Well, thank you
Frida.
so
Thank
much.
you
This is
for
amazing.
Thank
coming.
you guys
Thank
very
you.
much for having
Good to
me.
meet you.
Thank you, likewise.
Thanks. Okay, see you. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Okay, vote rec letter. Got it. Okay, Conservation Commission, potential new member, Patricia Hack, could not join us tonight. So I will reach back out and see if they're still interested.
HEC, how do you spell their name?
I think it was H-E, like Hack. Like
HECK.
H-E-C-K, yeah.
Okay,
Should I put their name in the minutes or no?
I don't think so.
Okay.
so we have a potential new member who we
Potential
will-
new member emailed me like the day after our meeting a month ago. And I said, great, I'll forward you the agenda. And then, but haven't heard back since. So maybe if you just skipped your email a couple days, or maybe they fell off the radar or who knows what. So I'll reach back out.
That'd be
and,
great.
In the meantime, we will
Great.
continue wondering. Great. Addison County Conservation Commission Summit debrief.
Yeah.
That sounds like it was cool. I've talked to a few people since then. How'd it go? I heard Jano spoke.
I could start off, or Kristen, you can lead off, however you like, but we both attended.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very productive, inspiring, I would say. Lots of exchange of good ideas. We just shared a little bit about the history of our Conservation Commission and what activities we're up to. A couple takeaways I had. One was that I think it's Cornwall meets every year after the new year and sets an agenda or a work plan for their full year. And then they stick to it that year, which is like blew us away. Like everyone was blown away by that efficiency. But it's an idea. another idea was some conservation commissions take an active role in the planning commission meetings and the DRB meetings. They actually attend those and provide a memo of review for each application that comes before the DRB. That's just how some,
Wow.
uh, but a lot of good exchange of ideas for efforts. And I think we're talking about maybe hosting each other in our towns, maybe throughout the year for an occasional event. Like, for example, Moncton might join us at the Bristol Pond because they own some of the lands adjacent to Bristol.
Mhm.
Cool.
So that's about what I took away. How about you, Jono?
I thought it was very well organized, pretty well attended. There were 13 towns. What I thought was sort of notably absent was a number of the towns out by the lake don't seem to have conservation commissions. Is that what you remember, Kristen?
Yeah, I think that's true, or they at least they weren't able to attend.
So they're looking, the Addison County Regional Planning Commission was taking a little bit of a lead role in some ways. They're looking into contacting some of those towns, seeing if they can assist. So that was kind of interesting. As Kristen mentioned, if you have good relations with other town commissions, committees, particularly the planning commission, things move along pretty smoothly. If you don't, there can be a lot of gridlock. So I think we're in a very good position because we have I would say relations with other committees. If we interesting, we're just talking about grants, but there's a guy that was just hired at Addison County Regional Planning Commission, and they are thinking about trying to have a workshop for funding for grants. So we'll probably hear back from that, Kristen or I, and let people know. But that would be nice to have a second opportunity to because I would imagine they're all able to see this sort of the same grant pool, but maybe certain ones just go through the Addison County Regional Planning Commission and they're separate. So there was a lot of there was 4 different breakout groups. The one that I was in was called How Things Get Done: Structure and Functioning of Commissions. Kind of overarching theme was, what are the successes, what are the barriers that commissions have. Size is one thing. People be able to volunteer or just get help with different projects. Was another aspect. I felt ours we have good leadership. I think we have a pretty good sense of taking on projects and following through with them, and so I think that was overall pretty helpful in terms of the way they organize things. And then Amy Sheldon was the keynote speaker, and she really covered a pretty broad spectrum of all of the topics that have been more recent. And then I guess lastly, we just sort of did an evaluation and a wrap up. These are every 5 years. I think there was a general consensus that it would be nicer if they were maybe every 3 years, at least more often. But I think also the sense was maybe neighboring conservation commissions, as Krista mentioned, might have chances for working together. And we've had a little bit of overlap, but maybe there's opportunities for more. I wholeheartedly recommend, if there's another one and people are on the board, that it was very worthwhile attending.
Yeah, it sounds good. I know, yeah, it would have been good to go, but not a good date. Kristen, did you want to jump into about other thoughts you had?
No, I think Jono pretty well covered it. They will follow up with us for future opportunities to get together. So we'll let the board know. We'll let the commission know.
Cool. That sounds great. Thank you so much for going and representing Bristol. I heard people saying like, "Oh yeah, there was a guy from your town. He said this stuff about whatever," and I'm like, "I'm so glad you were there."
The very last thing to mention was as a way to help us all be connected, that I mentioned the idea of a listserv. And so as topics come up, people have questions. Hey, we're trying to figure this out. Anybody have any ideas? That might be a very simple way. And the Addison County Regional Planning Commission was hopefully going to try and organize that. So we might find more interconnectivity with other commissions. And it just sounds like that's the theme for tonight so far. Ranting and working together.
Thanks for doing that.
Yeah.
Is there a map or a list of the conservation commissions in the county? I mean, how do we know which towns have them at this point?
I would have to say that we would go back to some of the organizers, Catherine Branch. There were three principles that really kind of either have been continuing to keep this going and taking the notes from the last 5 years. So they have all the information. I have the participant list in front of me right now, but I don't think we have a clearinghouse mechanism at this point. But I think the Regional Planning Commission, if they're going to do a follow-up job, they should be able to disseminate something that we'll all have access to, and sort of the let your fingers do the walking, and everything being right there, to not have to look it up and research. Just have a go-to document.
How do I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
How do towns that don't have one go about getting one? Do you have to just like talk to the select board and figure it out? Anyone know?
Kristen probably has an idea of how ours was started.
Yeah, you actually have to get a certain number of signatures from town citizens in order to bring it up for vote on town meeting day to establish a conservation commission.
Huh.
And I think it
I know
varies. It's some
Leicester-
percentage of the voter roll.
Leicester doesn't have one.
Right.
That's the town my mom lives in.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm somewhat familiar with New York State, and they have town environmental conservation commissions, but they also have the option of having a county environmental management council. And so you've got a next step level that kind of keeps track of those sorts of things, and there's more direct organization within the county because there's that another body just above all the individual towns, and actually representatives of the town conservation commission are on the environmental management council of the county. So it's a little bit more integrative that way. Whereas here, I think the planning commissioner council, whatever it is the closest thing that would maybe organize or keep track of things at the town level.
There is a natural resources committee of the Addison County Regional Planning Commission, and each of the towns sends a representative to that. And so I think that might, in Vermont here, that might serve a similar role to what you're describing in New York. Yeah.
Though it sounds like, John, it's more of a subset of the Addison County Regional Planning Commission, because they're a lot more based on planning and I think infrastructure. I don't want to say that definitively, but having as we've sometimes had with other issues, a liaison that would be part of a central Addison County collaborative of other commissions would be, I think, probably the next step. Hopefully we're headed there.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for going. It sounds like it was a really good event. I'm really glad that happened. John, could you fill us in about the Municipal Vulnerability Index?
Yeah, well, there's not a lot to say other than it's progressing. They seem to be doing, they're on their time frame that they'd hope to have. They've put together their list of elements that they want to include in it. What they're doing now is collecting the data, which I think is, in some instances, will be somewhat problematic because a lot of that stuff's hard to find. But that's their goal, and they're still on a time frame. The interesting thing, I think, is that it's gonna have this geospatial element to it that will be, it's a software component, but it'll make it easier to look up things, on a mapping type basis. And it'll connect with the data. So you can look up something on a map, you can look at an area, and there'll be layers, and you can select whatever the data element is that you want to look at. But then you can actually go and find the actual data and look at that. So, I think it's going to be a very useful tool if they, if it comes out the way they're talking about. And I think it'll be helpful for the town. I think it'd be helpful for us because it'll show areas of vulnerability, particularly for environmental things that, that we would want to know about. And certainly in terms of planning and reviewing things and protecting, whatever it is, whether it's wildlife or a natural area or something like that. So I'm encouraged. I think it will be useful. I don't, and of course for the town in terms of emergency management and those sorts of things, that's what it's really geared to. But I think it would be useful for our commission when it's done.
And what is the timeline? When
Well, next year, next spring, they're talking about.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was I don't know, probably Kristen, remember, or maybe Jono, remember there was that big one about flooding and flood vulnerability or areas that might have floods, and we did a whole bunch of work on that, and I don't remember whatever happened to that. Do you?
You may be thinking of the hazard mitigation plan.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah. I wonder if these are related or not.
Yeah, it's a good question. That one was brought to the town by the Regional Planning Commission, and all towns in Vermont have to have one. And then there's a regional planning hazard mitigation plan as well at the regional level. But I'm not sure how these two products are related.
Yeah, because we did some of this work a few years ago, right? Something like this. I don't know. Yeah, how that.
Yeah, I
connects,
assume
right?
that that's the kind of data that they will incorporate into this.
Yeah.
So they've got their feelers out and scrounging for as much data as they can collect for all these different items. And of course, flooding and flood management and that sort of thing is a big item in this index. So I wouldn't be surprised if somehow they incorporate that stuff into it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's going to be useful. That's cool. All right, well, great. Well, thank you, and just keep us posted.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, John.
Okay, the next thing is updating wildlife maps. There was supposed to be an email with an update, but then that didn't happen because we've had a pretty rough time on campus recently. And so we're just going to table that until next month, which will be sort of the wrap-up stage of the project, I think, unless he comes back and does J-term. So we'll see where they're at then. But
there probably wasn't a whole lot to report on right now.
there's a little bit to report. I know he got some pictures of gray foxes, I want to say, in Sycamore Park, which was fun. So he's got the cameras out now. The cameras are all out in Sycamore and Memorial. And I think he's a little worried about some human activity and feeling maybe like he was not as safe as he would have liked to be in the park. And so I reached out.
Wait, expand on that a little bit. What?
Like there were
not safe
here
out there?
people that were arguing and camping in the park, and he was uncomfortable about that. So I reached out to Valerie and Meredith and the select board and the Chief Nason and said, like, so this is happening. We've had this complaint from a student. We want to keep a good relationship going. So he was kind of nervous, but then acted unfazed. I wasn't sure. Valerie said she looks forward to see what kinds of photos we get of people, which wasn't a very.
I wave at him every time I go by, so he's got lots of pictures of me. But I'm not arguing and I'm not camping.
So she said that, and then Zach from the rec department said that as long as people aren't there at night, that's, dusk to dawn situation. So I'm not really sure where we landed on that exactly, but they are aware that he was
But
concerned about.
Interesting that of course those
seeing...
cameras are gonna catch anything that's going on.
and so he was like concerned about that, and then there was the discussion of, is it appropriate for students to be in the parks? Is it safe? And I'm like, please, I think Bristol's safe enough for the cameras and the students. But he was so we'll see how that unfolds. I'm hopeful that it was isolated incidents, but I don't know. But
I thought you meant just in terms of the safety of his cameras.
no, the safety
But
of like, he felt like that was he
Mhm.
wasn't expecting to like to stumble upon like encampments and
Yeah.
things. So, and that was something we talked with Alex about, and Zach, or maybe Freddie briefly. And so I don't know where they're at with that right now, but I just sent that email out trying alerting people that this was happening in the park, and that that he felt like he wasn't quite sure about if he should tell a grown-up about it or not, kind of feeling. So I reached out. I said I wanted to maintain good relationship between Middlebury and the commission and make sure the program and the project was proceeding, and that he felt heard, and so we'll just sort of see how that goes from there, if that is all that needs to happen. I think. They did find a gray fox, got a bunch of squirrels. Last I talked to him, only done one set of looking at some of the film, but he was excited in going through it and resetting the cameras, and he's got a memorial, and at Sycamore he's made signs. And I wanted him to write a report for us, but it just isn't a good time on campus. There was a student passed away, and the student body's a little shaken right now, so I didn't want to add extra work for him this week.
As an aside, Helen and my wife and I were out there one day, and we made a pretty good effort to try and find the cameras. Didn't we found one? So he's wherever he's, I think he was going to put 6 out, wasn't he? Out there?
Yeah, I forgot.
Well, we only could find one, so he's
That's pretty
done
good.
a pretty good job of hiding them. So.
That's fun. So he's going out, he's checking them every week, I think, and he's been kind of doing that work. So seems good. And then
so if you're in touch with him, I offered to help him go through the images.
Okay.
I haven't heard from him.
Okay, I'll remind
if he's fine,
him.
let him be. But if he needs help, I'm there.
I'll remind David about that. Okay. So that's my update for that, although it's not a really official update. Well, hopefully what we'll do is, if that's December, what was it? What was our next meeting?
14th.
December 14th. Hopefully he can give us something that's like he's done, or if he's not done, then if we'll do J-term with it, then we'll see what he gets at that point.
That's fine.
Yeah, so that's where we're at.
Shouldn't add pressure.
I don't want to add pressure. I was just like, you know what? I'm not going to push this meeting on him or anything like I might otherwise. Great. And then let's do some park updates. Who's got a park update? I guess I mini updated that there was that concern that the student had, but at Sycamore. Any other park updates? Kristen?
Eagle Park, as you've heard, is going to construction next Monday. They hope to be done by Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Let's see. So a couple of us, thank you for replying, can make it tomorrow at like 2:15 for about an hour, just to dig out some of the perennials that would be in the path of the excavator. And we're going to move them into pots and leave them right there on site, with the intention to replant them immediately after they're done. So over the Thanksgiving weekend, probably. I couldn't find straw today, but I'll keep looking tomorrow. Just a bale of straw, I think, that we can put around these plants to kind of shield them from the colder temperatures. But it looks, the long-term forecast looks like we're going to be in the 40s and 50s next week. So
I'll bet we can find, we can nestle the pots among the knotweed or something, just protected spots.
Okay.
And they're only going to be there a week.
A week.
Right? A week and a half.
You could rake the leaves around it, maybe.
Yeah. Cool.
So we should schedule the replanting. We haven't done that yet.
Yeah, that's true. Sometime after Thanksgiving, maybe the Friday or the Saturday. If folks are around, I know that's the travel time.
Yeah, we won't be here that Friday or Saturday, but
I will. I
but if
can help.
Okay.
you
Yeah,
And since
if
I'm
you need to
helping
leave,
dig them up, I'll know where they go.
yeah, it shouldn't take too long, really.
Yeah. Great.
I'm so excited. So what happened? Last you said they probably won't be back for a year, and now go time. Like, wow.
That's a good point. I did leave it that way last time. So they're getting permission, special permission to, we're beyond the dates of the permits that would allow this to happen, from the permit from Army Corps and the permit from the River Management Section. So they're getting special permission to actually carry out the work beyond those dates. So that's what changed. And also Masterson freed up their schedule. They had been doing post-flood recovery work along Route 125 in Ripton, East Middlebury, and now they're available to come, and we're able to start on Monday. So,
Wow, great.
Awesome. Yeah,
That's
so
great.
cool.
um,
And now, just as a reminder, because it's been since 2019. The plan is they already did. You said they've already sold the platform. They are going to do some more work. And then what about like the path and the angle for the accessibility? So the dock, but what about the lead up to the dock? I don't remember what our plan is there.
yeah, if we call that the ramp, the accessible ramp,
I
is going to
see.
be poured concrete, but it's going to extend a little further up the hill, because that area does tend to flood at times. It's designed now to allow flooding to happen under and over the walkway, and that should, and there'll be proper footers on this new concrete. As in the past, there were no footers on the slab that's there now that was buckled during the past flood. But this newer design has footers. They're going to remove the big rocks that are at the edge of the parking area at the top of the perennial garden. Those rocks will be removed and incorporated into the walkway. And they're going to put a split rail fence at the top to replace those boulders.
Wow.
And then
It's a little bit
also,
harder to weed, but I'll take it.
Yeah, it'd be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and
Wow.
also the railing on the platform is going to be redesigned to be removable. And
Yeah.
that will probably happen before the end of the year, because that's when the deadline is to spend these FEMA dollars. But the engineer is going to confirm that with doctors. And what will happen is, in the winter months, the railing will be removed and then set up almost like a gate that blocks access to the path for the winter months. The idea being that when the spring thaw happens, lots of ice and debris flows over the platform occasionally, and so without railings there, that debris will be free to flow past and not get caught up on the railings. Then once the spring thaw is past, then we'll replace the railings on the platform and reopen the park for use, or reopen
Excellent.
the
All
platform.
right.
The platform.
Right, and there is the idea that if we knew a big flood was coming, someone could be like
Yes.
dispatched to go rip up the
Yeah.
thing
And that
kind of
was
put
just
it
to
just in case. Yeah.
Nancy has it.
Oh yeah, thank you.
So just to clarify, so that's us doing the removing of the rails and putting them up,
It
not
is
some other company.
It's to be determined. It might be the Bristol Rec Department. It might be the road crew. That's yet to be discussed, I think. And it may be us, and maybe all those parties communicating to, before a big storm, for example. I don't know.
Great.
This is awesome. Yeah.
It is. Finally.
I'm so happy this is happening. I know.
I think the
Okay,
road crew seems to be the best choice because they could set it on their schedule. They probably are up there at some point during those seasons of wrapping things up and opening stuff up again. So that would seem to me the most logical choice.
I
Yeah.
think it makes sense too, just in terms of like logistics or like insurance. Like if I'm out there on a wet dock lifting something, I mean, I'm not even an employee. I don't have paper. I don't know. I feel like that's more
No,
liability for the town if we're doing it.
Plus you have to store it someplace, so again, the highway or somebody like that would
Well,
be
Well, it sounds
logical.
like they're
Yeah,
gonna
it
put
becomes
it,
its own gate.
it's
yeah,
gonna
they're
become
gonna
a
be a
gate
gate. They're gonna be
Pick it
stored
up
right
and
on
you
site.
carry it there.
Oh,
to
okay.
prevent access to the platform in the
Okay.
winter.
Yeah,
But
it's a pretty clever
that's
solution.
But that's a
yeah.
big job, though. I mean, that's.
It
the
is.
It sounds
potential.
heavy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Just saying. No.
yeah.
I don't know how many of us would feel capable of doing whatever that job is, you know.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's Eagle Memorial. Oh, Alex, was there a memorial thing you wanted to say, right? You're muted. You're muted.
You're muted, Alex.
You're still muted. There we go.
Told you,
There you
man, they
go.
can't hear me when we're muted.
Can't hear the kids either. That's the
That's the
point.
point. Well, anyhow, I've had all sorts of things to say all meeting long, and nobody knew about any of them.
You've been muted all day.
Like
We
you're
don't mind
paying any
hearing
attention
your
to
kids. It's fine.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the right place for this or not, but I just got to thinking last time I was up at Memorial that, and maybe this is kind of pressing now if we're starting to talk about grant funding for projects up there, that I kind of feel as though we ought to discuss rethinking the infrastructure in there. If we're going to apply for grants to repair that bridge, for instance, whether or not my general 2 cents, I think this is, I think everybody should go up there and take a peek around and see what you think if we're going to be investing money in it. But my general 2 cents is that bridge doesn't really go to anywhere. It's to the much smaller section of the park that doesn't really have much access to the river. It's really, really steep downstream of the bridge. So you can't actually get down to the water from there. You could just wade across the river upstream from it. I bet it is. I know I've never got to experience the bridge in all its glory, but I bet it was pretty cool to stand on that bridge and watch that waterfall tumble underneath you. But if we're picking projects to apply for a grant for instance, up there, steps or a way to get down to the area underneath the falls to me would be the one that's really cool. That's in my mind, the really attractive part of that park is that pool underneath the waterfall. It's really attractive to fisher people. It's just a really cool spot. And a lot of the park is, you can get at it if you're willing to scramble down it, but it's limiting to the folks that are going to enjoy it. And if we were picking projects to fund, for instance, to me, I think we ought to think a little bit about whether or not to go in for a new bridge or to think about access to that lower section of river.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to the bridge. I guess I just think, like, if there's a certain amount of funding out there and we can do one of those two things, I think it would be worth considering.
Yeah. I always imagine sort of like the Texas Falls Bridge area and how they have the steps and the thing. That's like,
gorgeous.
how do they do that? It's so beautiful. And what did it cost? And who did it? And I have no idea.
Do we have any idea how
I
much it
don't.
would cost to?
I don't.
It seems very expensive.
It's
Wow.
a lot of money for
What was
middle
the
of nowhere, right?
elevation? Was it about 40 feet? Is it more than that?
From the are you talking about Texas Falls or about from the like bottom of the pool at Memorial?
Yeah, Eagle, the bottom to the top, where you would imagine a series of steps.
Yeah, maybe more than that. It's a little hard to say because it slopes in kind of two directions. It would be, I think the way that I could see it would be there's a landing at one point and then stepping down there. It's weird. I don't really know exactly how one would go about designing something like that. It's kind of a funky spot. In some ways, I kind of hate to see it all chopped up with steps, but it is just really hard to get at. And if it's a park and the idea is that people are going to enjoy its most beautiful spots, it's too bad that most of the population can't access that area.
I hate to
Right.
interject this part, but maybe some of you have been seeing it online, maybe not, but people are in national parks and they're going up and trying to like pet buffaloes, and it's just a little. They're called Turons, tourists that are morons. But in any event, the the whole point of that is that you can't go on the basis that people have some common sense anymore. So I think we have to, unfortunately, be the common sense and say maybe having that bridge across and the fact that it's so steep. I've never been to the other side, but I remember seeing some mapping of the topography. You were almost asking for trouble to invite people to the
Yeah.
other side of that, and then say, oh yeah, see how close you can get to that cliff, and the drop off. So, but the idea of stairs going down to the bottom of a waterfall, I trust Alex's reconnaissance that he thinks that that's worth pursuing if and when there's an opportunity. So
It
I'm
is
glad he
true.
mentioned it, because I never really have contemplated that. Sometimes you go with what has been, right? You don't look at it from
Mhm.
anew.
Well, so we took Archer up there a couple years ago, and he was still a baby, so needed to be carried, and we wanted to go down to that little area, and it is kind of like it could be a swimming hole. It's really beautiful. You can see the falls from there, but it was sketchy trying to scramble down there with a baby and trying to scramble back up. And I tried to talk him out of it, and he wouldn't
I've
let
slid
me.
down that hill once on my back a couple times.
Wow.
But
But it is true that it is like, and it wouldn't cut into the more wilder part of the park, particularly. That's true. It's not across the river. It's still on the road side of the river, or that part of the road side of the river. And yeah,
and
it is an
it
interesting
doesn't,
idea.
it doesn't like I said, that you could just wade across the river, all the upstream part, like from the culvert down to the rapids. Well, not to the right, to where it really starts to get steep. Like you could just wade across the river and mess around on the other side. So it's not like you can't get at that portion of the river or portion of the park. But that is like the area between the private road and the private land further downstream is fairly skinny, and it's a pretty little woods, but it's not. I don't imagine that it's what most people will partake in and enjoy at Memorial. There's just not. You can't get to the river. There's not places to sit down and hang out. It's so yeah, I think it's a lower value spot to the general.
So this is a really interesting idea, and I appreciate the Turon's input into this. I do worry that if we invest a lot of money in rebuilding the steps that are already going down to what will now be a new bridge, it's always going to be somewhat treacherous. That's a very steep slope, unless we start doing switchbacks to get down to the bridge. And then how do we make sure that the bridge is safe? And so I'm really curious about this idea of let's rethink it and invest potentially in steps that go to a different, it sounds like you're talking about a bit more downstream.
Yeah, quite a bit. Quite a
Safe.
bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it'll
We'll
still be
have to, I think
but
as soon as you invite people into Memorial Park, because there's no sign, we're not like advertising it. Once you invite anyone there, you gotta fix the bridge or you gotta get the bridge removed.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
It's
Oh,
just
yeah.
too,
Bridge
it's
can't
just
really
too,
stay
it's just,
there.
what's that attractive nuisance, right? Like you have to do something with that. And the engineers have said it's still fine. If you want to scrabble up there and go on it, you could still for several years, they say, but now that the staircase isn't there, it's much harder to go to, so.
Wow. So is this, I know the Porter for a while has been talking about writing grants to improve. Is this a conversation we should have with her?
Yeah,
I
she's
don't know
supposed to be
that-
at our meeting next month, so.
I don't know that, like, what I'm talking about, I don't think there's any way that it becomes accessible from a handicap accessibility perspective, but maybe it could be under the same grant or something, like it wouldn't be part of like what Porter was talking about earlier with, I think focuses more on that area between the steep section and the culvert, which has got like you could ramp down to that if you graded the parking lot, in such a way that it could be handicap accessible. What I'm talking about, there's no way. It's going to be a very steep staircase if it is a staircase.
Right.
But yeah, under the same like funding umbrella, maybe that's possible. Maybe we can.
I just remember Porter talking about writing grants to work on the stairs and the bridge before the ADA accessible.
She's been excited about, ever since we showed it to her, she's been excited about, like, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful. It's been here all this time. I never knew. So I know she's been excited about the idea of helping at Memorial for a long time. And it's also, I think, been there's just like, what do you do? How do you do it? It's just a little overwhelming. But she's been excited about that for some time now.
Yes.
Yeah, Nancy.
So I've only been to Memorial once and not very far past the parking lot. So I kind of have a question for everyone else. Like, what do we have a long-term plan for what we want or foresee the public using Memorial for? Do we want it? I feel like Sycamore and Eagle kind of have that wide space to play in and walk your dogs and do all of that. Like, do we have a plan for like Memorial? Like, do we want people to go there? Do we want to say, hey, this is what it's for? This is.
Or just take it
out. Historically, it had a picnic table and a scenic overlook.
Oh yeah, we have a management plan, of course. That was just approved by the.
That's what we've been doing that.
But moving forward, I don't know. It doesn't sound
right. I think that it has a picnic. It had traditionally a picnic spot. There was a little spot people had campfires in, and there's a teeny walk to a very beautiful and awe-inspiring and dangerous waterfall right below your feet, and it's very like a scenic overlook. And then you're kind of like, well, that's it. And then you go back to your car and you go, and it's total time spent is 15 or 20 minutes if that's all you're doing, or you could stop and have like a picnic there, and then that would be 45 minutes, and that's it. And that's all we've ever had traditionally there. It's been there for a long time.
Or swimming and fishing.
Yeah,
lots of fishing and swimming.
That what I was going to say in response to your question there, Nancy, is I'm a little conflicted in one way about what I just suggested, because what that is currently is the best fishing hole in that river, but cannot sustain a ton of pressure. It's not going to be like the Halpin Bridge place where like everybody goes and catches a bunch of stocked rainbow trout out of it and everybody's happy. It's not like it's there are native rainbows and native rookies there. It cannot get fish to beat hell and still be what it is. In some ways, it would be kind of a drag if that's what it became, because it would cease to exist very quickly. But when I think about like what is like special about Memorial Park, it's got a pretty incredible fishing hole, and it's got a cool little swimming spot if you wanted to swim in that hole too. It's colder than heck a lot of the year, but it's also a 10-foot deep hole in that river, which doesn't really exist anywhere else. So I don't know how that fits into our vision of its use, but those are I think it's a question of whether we're willing to sacrifice like its natural traits in the name of public access is something that we have to consider too. And I'm a little conflicted about that as myself.
Right. Well, it is in itself a wildlife corridor. And if there are interesting fish that are there that are hard to find elsewhere, do we want to increase access to that so that? Right. Yeah, that's the thing. Like there, almost everywhere downstream, if you go a quarter mile downstream of there, it's all stock trout. But they don't get up that really steep section very well. Although, funnily enough, I was just on the phone with the regional guy from the fisheries department, kind of giving him some grief over the fact that I caught a bunch of native rainbow trout out of that pool this year, which are not supposed to be there, and they swear they're only stocking sterile trout, but these are like trout with par marks that were born in that river, so clearly they are getting there. But either way, they're like wild. They're actually wild fish, and it would be kind of too bad if it suddenly got whacked. But I don't know that that's necessarily what would happen either. Like there's even despite
despite that, there's a lot of easier places to catch stock trout out of the river. So I don't know that it's suddenly going to become the Halpin Road Bridge or something.
Well, swimming, more of a swimming hole too.
Yeah, that's true. And I don't know that that would really bother them that much. The trout seem to do just fine under Bartlett Falls, and people are jumping in there all the time.
Yeah, this is a really good question though. What do we want? Well, first, like historically, what has it been and what do we want it to be? What would we want? What would be ideal? I think those are really good questions to think about. Porter's gonna be coming to our meeting next month. She was, I had emailed her about what we talked about, and she said that she was excited to hear that we were interested in accessibility, and she said that, she was, of course, wanted to work with us to maintain the natural character of the parks and to worry about all the things that we had brought up at the meeting. I'd written an email out to her about that, and she said that was something she wanted to continue a conversation about. She couldn't make it tonight, but she will be making it to our December 14th meeting, where she wants to talk about all those plans that she had showed us with the PowerPoint last time or 2 times ago, as well as the signage stuff. So we'll be talking to her about like kind of a guest at the beginning will be Porter to talk about those things in a few weeks. Other park updates or thoughts on Memorial? Do we want to continue? Are we good on that?
I don't know, Ellen wants to mention the kiosk.
Oh, yeah, so we can move to Sycamore, yeah.
What, are we done? Are we done with Memorial Park?
I have one last point that I was gonna make on Memorial. Thank you, Helen. Which was that I don't know if I fully conveyed this in my talk about the bridge thing or bridge versus steps thing, but what seems to me to be the great advantage of the bridge would be the view, like to be up on an overlook over that waterfall, which is pretty spectacular. But I don't know that those are that and the steps are like mutually exclusive. And there might be a very interesting way that we could have an overlook, a platform there that does not involve a bridge, that serves as the top landing for those steps going down. And could even we got to talk with Porter about this, but like that might be, it's possible that overlook could be handicap accessible. I don't know quite how the pitch works out, but if you did a little grading at the very top of it, it might be feasible that this could all work into Porter's plan. And if that, if we had this like accessible overlook and then, a little picnic area with the fire ring or not the fire ring, whichever, however, upstream a little bit, and then the like steps, the steep steps down to the little, swimming area and fishing area, whatever, joining the waterfall area, that could be a way to kind of wed these different visions of the park in a way that could be.
That's a great idea.
Seems safe.
I don't think we want to lose the overlook because that is pretty sweet.
Yeah.
I have some quick comments and maybe a summary of this topic. It might be a little overly expansive, but you're talking about an overlook. I don't know what, Alex, you felt was the traverse from the other side. If say a bridge was there, is it easier to navigate down with steps to the spot from the other side?
No, it's not feasible from
not at all. Okay, well there crosses that idea. But two parts of it. One is it might be worth in the spring taking an opportunity to have the whole commission go out and really look at the site. But let's say there are some grant opportunities that Frida's seeing come before her that happened before then and need to be submitted. I think we should take the opportunity. Sometimes they're just trying to get a sense of the scope of a project before they actually do, and potential design ideas and concepts. So seems like we want to do something, but we're undetermined as to what it is. And so putting that on Frida's, I think she's already probably got it on her radar with parks in general, then we can table it to the spring.
Yeah, it'd be fun to take a field trip out there and have everybody get their eyes on it and talk over the various options. That'd be cool.
Yeah. Yep. Added it as a spring to do field trip memorial. We'll see if I remember in spring, but Maybe I'll make a note of my calendar for March or something. Anything about Sycamore now? You did some work at Sycamore, right?
Yes. John and his wife Deb and I went out to the kiosk because we had heard that Dave, is that the student?
Yeah, David. Yeah.
David was going to put up a sign in the kiosk to tell about the wildlife cameras, and I was out there and realized I couldn't slide the glass because it was all warped, and I just thought, all right, well, let's just redo this. And I wrote to Meredith, and she said that the rec department plans to work on the kiosk more intensively in the spring of this spring. But in the meantime, if you want to do anything, you can. So we went out, took the glass off. It turned out it was just really old, very thin cork board that was warping, and it was looking pretty shaggy.
Yeah.
And I thought we could just rip it off, spray paint the whole thing. Well, it didn't rip off, it was glued on. So it took a long time to get it off. And then it looked pretty good without doing anything else. So then we cleaned the glass, put up the stuff all lined up. It looks gorgeous.
Yeah,
it looks great.
those
So now
pictures
the
are
glass
great,
is in place. Everything's lined up. David's notice is there. We did notice that when they do redo it, and I think we should redo some of our signage, like there's some pollinator information that I would be happy to revise. Printing it on very bright paper is really helpful because it pops. So there's an old sign that says, "Welcome to Sycamore Park." And it looks quite old and faded. I don't even know how that was made, but just revamping
So, like laminated as well, maybe?
That one is laminated.
I think there's a shocking amount of access to laminators among this commission, I think we discovered.
And there's a species list, an old species list. It's just all
in
warped.
there.
It just needs to be spruced up. And if they're doing this in the spring, we can contribute new material to
This looks
it.
great.
So it looks better now, and it'll look even better next summer.
That's nice.
I think one of the things that bugged me was the orientation of the kiosk.
Yeah.
Because when you drive up, it's this way. So when you drive up, you don't really see any board to look at.
Yeah.
And it just seems odd. I don't know if it was put there maybe because of flooding, that it's in line with
And all the information is on
it's on one side.
the counterintuitive side.
Right.
And the other side is
Right.
blank.
So if they're gonna redo it or replace it or whatever, somehow if we can, whatever, ask them to consider putting it so that when you drive up, it's like right there and obvious where you might be attracted to go look at it. It's the first time I've ever been over to the kiosk. I mean, it's just, I didn't even know it was there, frankly.
And Chris and Pete built those, right? At the parks, is that right?
At the one at Sycamore, I'm not positive, but definitely the ones at all the other parks he built.
And Nancy and I took down the fencing around the pollinator garden, and it looks so much better. So we left all the posts, so it clearly marks that there's something here. And I have new pollinator garden signs that I will post. Wow. I don't know if you can zoom in, but I have one for Eagle Park and one for Sycamore Park, and so these will be on the edge of those gardens. And I think just leaving the posts makes it very clear what the edge is, and we just have to keep the sumac out. But
you had some helpers dig it out.
Porter and two volunteers did a huge job of digging it out as opposed to just cutting it. So we just keep working on it.
And you want to be reimbursed for signs.
It's fine. Well, yes.
But we got to figure out how to do that. And I called the office, it was a Friday, because that's when I finally had time to call.
Yeah.
And then they were closed for Friday. And then I called the next Friday, because that's the only time I had to call, and they were closed, because I close every Friday.
Well, I stopped by.
So
I gave her the invoice.
You did? Oh,
and
good.
she said, we just need proof that you paid for it, and you will be reimbursed. I don't know from what fund. I just said this is for the Bristol Conservation Commission.
Okay.
Perhaps the Edith Stock Fund. Right?
Okay. That's fine. Yeah.
It was for $80.
I finally got the Sophie one, and she did date it for May, but I haven't done anything with it because I just didn't. I just had a lot to do, so that's on my plate to get to
Okay.
that.
Okay.
And I'll make a note to myself. Hey, Sophie, all weekend. Okay, and then, so you took care of that, that's wonderful.
Yep.
Anything about Saunders River access? Someone was visiting, someone was newly interested, right? What was that?
So
Kristen?
the Saunders River access and the adjacent Paul Fuller parcel have Vermont River Conservancy easements on them. And that requires an annual inspection of the property by the Vermont River Conservancy. And so their AmeriCorps volunteer is going to go visit the site on Wednesday. And so I just let the neighbors know, and they just walk the site to make sure that everything is in accordance with the management plan.
Mhm.
That's happening next Wednesday night.
Makes sense.
Great.
Okay, that sounds good. I guess that's the end. What time? Gosh, we're pretty good this 7:30 thing. I'll say new. Oh, you have something else. Sorry.
Jono, did we want to bring in front of this commission the application to the Flood Resilient Communities Fund grant?
When you say bring it forward, I think you're a little bit more versed with it, if you don't mind.
Yeah, let them know
But
about it.
but I'm fine with the discussion of it, if that's kind of what you're suggesting.
Yeah, that's what I was asking. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just sent it as an attachment to all of your emails earlier this evening, so you can look through it. But this was an opportunity that came up while we were all on hiatus in the summer, and therefore we couldn't bring it to the Conservation Commission. So instead, I brought it as a citizen to the Bristol Select Board for their approval to submit. But essentially, this was a possible grant source to look at alternatives for river restoration and conservation between Hewitt Lane Bridge and the Saunders River access parcel. And there's a number of landowners along there, one of which is Jono, and
Mm-hmm.
the other of which is the A. Johnson Company. Those are the two primary landowners, I would say. And we applied for monies from the Flood Resilient Community Fund. Then the July floods happened, like 2 weeks later. And suddenly there was a great demand for flood resilient funds. And so they turned down that application, but are encouraging us to apply to a new grant source. That's the meeting that Frida was talking about at the beginning of our meeting tonight. On Monday, we're going to meet with the regional planning folks and Frida and Valerie and myself to talk about how to apply for two other grants that could fund this alternatives analysis. So that's the short story. The details
Cool.
are in the grant application that I sent to all of your emails earlier this evening.
Ah,
Cool. Thank
so
you.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Thank you for your leadership on this one, Kristen.
Sure, of course. Yeah. We were approached by the state folks and strongly encouraged to apply for this. That's what the motivation was. That's what the impetus was.
Good.
Cool. Yeah. No, we sort of ebbed and flowed on working with the river as there's been opportunity or interest, right? And with COVID, everything just got so weird. So it's good to see we're kind of back thinking about some river work. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you so much for doing that. And yeah, I look forward to reading about that.
Mhm.
And then just keep us posted about that at our next meeting then.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. That sounds great. Okay. Is there any other new business? I don't think we had anything to add to the agenda. No events, except for there is the plant digging upping tomorrow. So tomorrow, plant digging.
At 2 something.
Yeah. And they'll be at Eagle Park. And then, otherwise our next meeting is December 14th at 6 o'clock. And I think that's everything. We're good? And next meeting, we'll talk to Porter and we'll have some updates on the various items. Okay. Sounds good.
Wonderful.
And maybe David, if he's
Oh,
got
yeah,
anything.
David, yeah.
Don't crush, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll see, like, yeah. David. Final. Okay, yeah, so maybe we'll do Porter, we'll do David and or Alexis, see where they're at, and then we'll do like final updates. That sounds like a good meeting, that'll be good. Great. Okay, so with that, anyone had to make a motion?
Make a motion.
I'll say.
You'll just make a motion, I like it. What should that motion be for?
I will make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
This sounds wonderful. Seconded already, sight unseen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Adjourned. Have a nice
Thank
night.
you.
Thank you.
Good to see you
Thanks
guys.
so much.
Good to see you.